They've been a long-time sponsor of these events and partners with the association, and we certainly appreciate their continued support. I've had several questions lately about whether or not I'm ready to give up my presidency and move on to something else, and I have to say that, to be honest, my entire time serving with the board has been just a great experience for me. I mean, I've got to work with Lane and the staff, and I've enjoyed that very much. I think we've accomplished some things during this time that have been good for the association and our members. I've developed some fantastic business relationships and some good friendships. So I feel blessed to have been able to serve. I'm looking forward to continuing to serve the association any way I can with the foundation. But I want to ask Peter to come up. I'm going to get out of y'all's way pretty quick. But earlier today, Peter Imes was officially elected as the 2026-2027 president of the association, and I am so proud to pass the gavel on to Peter.
Here's something for you also.
Around here, yes, sir.
Thank you, Russell, and thank you to Lane and your staff for your consistent hard work. You make being on this board extremely easy, which I'm thankful for. The past few years, like Russell said, MPA has had several successes. We've defended against attacks on public notices. We've gotten legislation passed to double private party public notice rates. We provide learning and networking opportunities at conventions like this. And through the foundation, we've helped foster the next generation of journalists for the state. Challenges certainly still remain, though, and lately our conversations have been turning to the role of philanthropy and what the role it can play both at a media company level and also at the association level. And we're continuing to have those conversations. As they come into focus more over the next year or two, we'll certainly communicate those to you guys and be in contact with you all. We want to thank all of you for your membership and your support of MPA and for the vital role that you each play in your communities. I'm honored to serve this association and to represent all of you. Over the next couple of months, Lane and I have talked about doing some site visits. So we're going to get out, visit your newspaper sites, and but in the meantime, if we can be of any service to you, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And now, Lane, what's next?
You're going to call on Wyatt.
Wyatt.
First Hall of Fame induction.
Wyatt Emmerich, come forward, and we're going to present our first Hall of Fame nomination.
Thank you. Lane emailed me a while ago and said, I need to talk to you about, a nomination to the Hall of Fame. And I was thinking, yeah, it's about time. My grandfather's in the Hall of Fame. My father's in the Mississippi Press Hall of Fame, and I am a two-time award winner of the Emmerich Award. He called me and said, I'm really excited. I know you're going to be excited too. I'm like, oh, it's no big deal. Said, we nominated Tim Kalich to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm like, oh, that's great. He's been in the business 42 years. I've only been in the business like 48 years. But I guess you have to retire or die to get in the Mississippi Press Hall of Fame. Joking aside, Tim and I have been in this business in the trenches for so long, I think, and I'm so delighted that he's been nominated for this. Tim is like a brother to me. He's been a colleague. I remember when he came down to Jackson and said, I need to talk to you about something. my heart sank. And we went out to Bravo, and he was with Betty Cale. There's Betty Cale. And I guess I already knew, and he told me, you know, I'm retiring. I promised Betty Cale that, you know, I wouldn't work like a dog forever. And at the end of our lives, you know, find time for Betty Cale. And, you know, I took it like a man. I got up promptly, went into the men's room and boo-hooed for about 10 minutes and came back. But I think probably, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but if I think about the great journalists that I've known in my career, I think of two people. I think of Jim Abbott and I think of Tim Kalich. And they were what I consider to be the absolute paragons of journalists. And apparently Jim's got a new book out. I'm just really excited about reading it, called, I think, Paperman? Yeah, so that's great. I recommend all of you read it. Tim is just absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And I will readily admit, absolutely he's a better journalist than me, 100%. And I tried to get him into corporate management way back when, and I'm sure if I had, my company would be a lot better off than me running it. But he didn't want to do that. He wanted to run a newspaper, and I understand that. And he did a phenomenal job. Tim, I just can't say enough about Tim. I mean, you know, he's just the work ethic, his commitment to the community, his commitment to journalism, his striving to be objective as a journalist. I mean, he's the whole package. And when I look at people who have been inducted in the Hall of Fame, I don't know if you can come up with a Hall of Fame of the Hall of Fame, but if you had a Hall of Fame of the Hall of Fame, I can guarantee you Tim Kalich would be in it. So I'm so excited to be making these introductory remarks. Thank you.
Tim, you come up.
I guess I get a chance to say something.
Absolutely.
First off, I want to say thank you to Wyatt. That was awfully nice. He may have laid it on a little bit thick, but I didn't mind hearing it. And I also want to say something that not only Wyatt, but his father, John, and really the whole Emmerich family has been very important to me for my entire time in Mississippi, which started out in 1982 when I moved to Greenwood. Wyatt said, you know, that he considers me as a brother, and I want to wait to toward the close of my remarks to say a little bit more about that. I want to introduce you to my family that's here. First off, I am the youngest of 7 children. My sister Patrice flew here from Kansas City with her husband Brooke. My sister had her gallbladder removed a few weeks ago, and I tried to discourage her from coming, but I'm gratified that she didn't listen to me. Also not listening to me is my daughter Elizabeth. You might pick up this, but being headstrong is kind of a Kalich trait. My mother said, you can tell Tim something, but he's going to do what he's going to do anyway. And Elizabeth has picked up that trait. And she's come here with our 3 grandsons. There's Tim's, and there is Bet and Kip. And Tim's has been given the role of going like this to me if I talk too long.
He's on the clock.
Elizabeth came to her first convention, MPA convention here on the coast when she was 1 month old, and probably came to almost every one after that until she went off to college. Like her mother, she was always supportive of me. She understood that what I did was important, even if it sometimes cut into our family time. A lot like her mother in that regard, and that leads me to Betty Gale. Betty Gale and I met after I moved to Mississippi, after 6 months after I moved here. And so she's been with me through all the ups and downs of newspapering, including getting used to the fact that people were going to say and write nasty things about her husband from time to time. And that wasn't always easy for Betty Gale because she's a real soft-hearted person, kind-hearted person. And also she endured lots of long nights and lots of weekends when I'd be consumed at work, you know, kind of overloaded, swamped, or there's some emergency, which there always is in our business. And she stuck by me through it. She was, you know, always supportive, and probably most importantly is she was always willing to listen to me. You know, she was someone I could vent to, someone that I could bounce ideas off of. So this honor, I accept it and share it with my wife, Betty Gale, and I also share it with all the fine people I worked with at the Commonwealth for all these many years. And I also share it with my colleague publishers from other Emmerich newspapers. Many of them are here in this room and who were, you know, a big part of counsel to me over the years. You know, one of the things that was nice about working in our company is that you could always bounce things off of others. And these folks were always very helpful to me when I didn't quite know what the answer was. When Lane called me and told me I was being inducted in the Hall of Fame, part of my first reaction was, you know, very gratified. My association with the Mississippi Press Association has been one of the more rewarding parts of my career. All of you know who do this. If you put out a newspaper and you set as a high priority to seek the truth and to print it, it's kind of hard to necessarily have close friends in the community where you live. But I always hear, because you're always ticking somebody off, you know? Wyatt's father, I should say this, he used to say that editors should move about every 10 years because by then you've made everybody in the town mad, so you might as well start somewhere new. But besides feeling gratified, I also felt a little bit unworthy, particularly being inducted in a year when a journalism legend like Ida B. Wells is being inducted. You're going to hear in a few minutes about how Ms. Wells was, you know, exhibited such bravery and courage and really some tremendous pressure in order to document the lynchings and other acts of inexcusable violence that was done against Black Americans. You know, I tried to be brave and courageous as the circumstances demanded, but the circumstances I faced were a lot tamer than those faced by Miss Wells and the journalists that came after her during the 1950s and the 1960s who covered the civil rights movement. It's a real testament, I think, to the progress that Mississippi has made in racial progress, in that journalists today don't have to really fear for their safety or their property or their family safety in doing their job. So I really don't know, you know, how I would have reacted if I had faced the kind of threats that my predecessors in this profession faced. And so I hope that as I accept this award, I also do it with a little bit of humility. Everybody likes stories, so I want to end with a couple for you. Wyatt mentioned about, you know, that I won the J. Oliver Emmerich Award multiple times. And I never met Oliver Emmerich. He died 4 years before I moved to Mississippi. But the fact that that award had the Emmerich name on it always was very special to me. Wyatt's father, John, he hired me in 1982 as a reporter. And after a couple of years, he took me under his wing and he decided that he wanted to teach me how to run a newspaper. And ultimately, he made me the general manager, but he asked me at that time to concentrate on advertising and circulation, and he kept his hand in the newsroom, and that included doing the editorial page because he found it to be so much fun. But he traveled a lot. Mr. Emmerich was on the boards of the Associated Press and the Audit Bureau of Circulations, and he had meetings to attend, and they were always out of state, and then he traveled all over the world with those organizations. So when he was gone, somebody had to do the editorial page. And at that time, the responsibility fell to the managing editor. And we had a managing editor who lived by the motto that he'd rather ask for forgiveness than for permission. And Mr. Emmerich had a different motto. And his motto was, don't plow any new ground while I'm out of town. And he also didn't like surprises. So you can imagine that the two of them, how well they meshed. Well, on this particular occasion, I should also say that Mr. Emmerich, if there was a topic that Mr. Emmerich wrote more editorials about than anything, it was writing about education. He was one of the influential journalists that Governor William Winter reached out to get their support during the push for what became the Education Reform Act of 1982. So on this particular occasion, when Mr. Emmerich was out of town, the managing editor decided to write on education. But he wrote an editorial that was almost completely opposed to everything Mr. Emmerich had written about the subject before. So Mr. Emmerich got home, read his paper that night, and was miffed. And he came to the office the next day, got at his desk, and began to write that next day's editorial. And it began something like this: on further reflection. And he retracted everything that had been written the day before in the paper. And then when he was done with that, he came into my office and he said, from now when I'm out of town, you'll be writing the editorials. So that's how it all started. Last story. As I said, I never really felt that I was under any severe threat as a journalist during my time. But I did acquire a few enemies. And one of them engaged in an old-fashioned poison pen campaign. And this was started in 2011. And they wrote an anonymous letter, over the next 4 years, periodically would send the exact same letter out, would send it to me, send it to members of our staff, and send it to dozens of businesses and individuals in the community. And the letter accused me of being an awful racist, and it also claimed that I was the love child product of an affair between my mother and John Emmerich. And as people got that letter, they would call me or come to see me, and they were worried and they were appalled that anyone would stoop so low as to trash talk about my mama. And I told them, I said, don't worry about it. You know, the people in Greenwood didn't know my mother, but I knew my mother. And my mother, at this time, she was in her 90s, and she was suffering from dementia, unfortunately. But when she was younger, she had a wonderfully irreverent sense of humor, and she didn't worry too much about people who were overly sensitive. So she died about a year after the first letter was sent out. But if I had shown that letter to my mother, she would not have been appalled. She would have laughed about it, and she would have felt flattered. So Wyatt, you and I may be brothers. I want to thank you all for listening to me. I want to thank the Mississippi Press Association for this award. My oldest brother said that this award is officially recognizing you as an adopted son of Mississippi. And I really hope so. Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to call up MPA board member and publisher of the Mississippi Link, Miss Jackie Hampton.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor Ida B. Wells, a journalist whose courage, integrity, and commitment to truth help define what journalism is at its best. We honor her by inducting her into the Mississippi Association Hall of Fame, and I consider it a privilege to share a bit of her accomplishments. Born into the chains of slavery Ida B. Wells did not let her beginnings dictate her end. She was born in Holly Springs, Mississippi on July 16, 1862, just months before the Emancipation Proclamation. She rose from circumstances that would have defeated many. After losing both her parents and her infant brother during the yellow fever epidemic of 1878, she assumed responsibility for her younger siblings while still a teenager. Yet, even amid hardship, she developed the determination, independence, and sense of justice that would shape her remarkable life. Wells began her journalism career in Memphis, Tennessee in the 1880s by writing for religious and community newspapers. She became editor of the Evening Star and later co-owner and editor of the Memphis Free Speech. She realized early on that knowledge was power and that a pen could be just as mighty as a sword. Through her reporting, she challenged injustice, exposed corruption, and gave voice to people who were too often ignored by those in power. Her greatest contribution, and the work for which history remembers her best, was her fearless investigation of lynchings in the American South. At a time when many newspapers repeated myths and excuses surrounding racial violence, Ida B. Wells gathered facts. She interviewed witnesses. She examined records. She followed the evidence wherever it led her. She used journalism not to inflame fear, but to expose truth. And it cost her a great deal. In 1892, after publishing articles that challenged the reporting and accounts of a lynching in Memphis, her newspaper office was destroyed by a mob, and threats against her life made it impossible for her to return. But she refused to give in. Her work appeared in newspapers and magazines across the United States and abroad. Through groundbreaking publications such as Southern Horrors and The Red Record, she documented racial violence with a rigor and determination that anticipated the methods of modern investigative journalism. She helped found the National Association of Colored Women and was a co-founder of the NAACP. Yet, throughout her life, she never stopped being a reporter. She never stopped asking difficult questions. She never stopped demanding evidence. And she never stopped believing that truth and honesty in reporting could change the world. Today, many of the principles we consider essential to journalism, such as fact-finding, accountability, investigative rigor, and speaking truth to power, are principles that Ida B. Wells practiced more than a century ago. In 2020, nearly 90 years after her death, she was posthumously awarded a special Pulitzer Prize citation for her outstanding and courageous reporting. Historians have called her one of the founders of investigative journalism. Journalist Nicole Hannah-Jones has described her as the greatest investigative journalist in American history. For Mississippians, her story carries special significance. Even though her work ultimately took her far beyond the state's borders, the values that shaped her were forged in Holly Springs. The courage, determination, and sense of purpose that define her life's work have their roots right here in Mississippi. Today, as we look back at the legacy of Ida B. Wells, I feel strongly that we are called to carry her torch. And in so doing, let us challenge ourselves to look at our own communities, identify the systemic injustices of our time, and even when it is uncomfortable, let us be as brave as Ida B. Wells by turning on the light of truth. The Mississippi Press Association Hall of Fame's record exists to recognize individuals whose contributions have elevated journalism and strengthened the public's understanding of the world around them. Few people have done so more profoundly than Ida B. Wells. For her pioneering work as a journalist, editor, publisher, investigator, and champion of truth, for her extraordinary courage in the face of intimidation and danger, and for her lasting impact on both American journalism and American society, I proudly welcome Ida B. Wells into the Mississippi Press Association Hall of Fame. Join me in welcoming her great-grandson, David Dexter, to accept the induction on her family's behalf.
What an honor this is. All right, you know what, I'm actually glad that she had those pictures up before. So the picture they had up with Ida and her 4 children, the little girl in the front was her youngest daughter named Alfreda. So when they ran her out of Memphis, she came to Chicago and she fell in love with this guy named Ferdinand. So they had 4 kids. Her youngest daughter was Alfreda. And then she went to the University of Chicago and really got good at journalism and everything. So she partnered with Ida Wells to write the book. And it was done at the University of Chicago Press. So at that point, we didn't understand what a royalty meant. So when she had her 5 children, one of which was my father, Donald, they decided to start the Ida B. Wells Foundation in the early 80s. And they went to the press, University of Chicago Press, and they said, okay, we'll give the royalties to the foundation. So that was our first seed money. And then later on, when my sister and brother came along from my father and falling in love with my mother, Maxine, we decided that we were going to take the foundation to another different level. So my sister decided that she was going to further the whole development of women's suffrage. And she went around and found some people who wanted to create these murals on women's suffrage. And then we came up with the idea of the monument, because Ida B. Wells lived in Bronzeville for years on a street called King Drive. And in Bronzeville, they put up the Ida B. Wells homes that stood for years. And when they finally tore them down, we created a group that would raise the money for this. It's not a mirror, it's a monument. And it's 35 feet tall. And it was created by Richard Hunt, which is one of the best architectural mural people in the entire country. He has a lot of stuff in the university, the art museum on Michigan Avenue. All of his stuff is there. So that coin that you saw, my sister, my brother and sister saw that. And I thought it looked pretty good. My brother thought it looked pretty good. My sister was like, no, that's outrageous. It should look like this. Her dress should look like this. Her hair should look like this. And that led us to contact Mattel. So Mattel decided to create a doll of Ida B. Wells. They showed us the prototype. I thought it looked all right. My brother thought it looked all right. But my sister said, this is an outrage. Her dress is like this. It should look like this. It should look like this. So we basically shut up. And my sister decided what the dress was going to look like, what her hair was going to look like. So Mattel created Ida B. Wells doll. And then the United States Mint put her on that quarter. And they also came up with a Christmas ornament. I thought the prototype looked good. My brother thought it looked good. My sister's like, this is an outrage. So she looked at it and changed like 80%. So the U.S. Mint also created a Christmas ornament of Ida B. Wells. So that money allowed us to expand the foundation even farther. So now we go back to Russ College every year and we give $6,000 to journalist students who are up and coming to become journalists just like Ida B. Wells. And we sponsor another scholarship for $2,000 a year for my father, who went to University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. And now we're going to expand even more because we figured out that our phones are magic. If you can figure out a way to get somebody to press this, click that, and donate this, or Zelle this, or create a TikTok page and stuff, you can make money. And all you need is your phone. And I'm like, oh my God. So we're going to follow my sister's lead, because she's like a clone of Ida B. Wells, and expand the foundation even more so we can start getting the numbers up to like somewhere between 10 and 12,000 a year in terms of scholarships and donation to other causes that further the rights of women's suffrages. And just in case you all wanted to see what it looked like, if you wanted to look at a picture of it, our website has all that information. Now, here. Okay, so the website is IBW, like Ida B. Wells Foundation.org. So when you look at the home page, it's going to have a picture of her, right? And in the upper left-hand corner, you just click on that little button, and it's going to show Ida B. Wells resources, scholarships, and supported projects supported. You click on that support, and you're going to see magic. That is the 35-foot story monument in Bronzeville that basically my sister strong-armed everybody looking like this. She basically made Richard do it. And down there, you take a picture of her. Those are the murals that my sister and her friends created on the back of Columbia College. There's another mural downtown on 623 South Wabash. And the other one is a marker in Chicago. And my sister basically did all of this. We just kind of like stood behind her and shut up and let her talk. So I appreciate everything that you're doing. And as I got older, I kind of realized that Chicago is North Mississippi. Most people who go on the west side, because I spent 30 years in residential Lincoln, pretty much on the west side and south side of Chicago. So if you, oh, well, where are you from? Oh, my mother was from Memphis, like Memphis. Oh, my mother was from, Holly Springs. Like, what do you know about Holly Springs? So you come to find out that thousands of people migrated from Mississippi, and they ended up in Chicago. So I live now in Chicago, which is North Memphis. Thank you very much.
Let's congratulate both of our inductees. That wraps up everything tonight. I want to thank Ceasefire again. Also want to remind everybody that the Silver Dollar Breakfast will be served at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow morning in the Grand Ballroom. Also want to encourage everybody to check out the silent auction items. There's some Mississippi State football tickets, some bottles of whiskey, some books, a lot of good things. Please check them all out. I'm not sure what time it is, but the bar here is open until 7:30, so about another 30 minutes. So help yourselves. Thank you.